All right, well, hello everyone and welcome to our webinar today. It is the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started. What we're going to be talking about today is our Pathways to Excellence program at the National Community Action Partnership. This is kind of what we call our the Community Action Journey to Organizational Excellence. So we're going to start out today by framing this up for you, and I am Courtney Kohler. I am a Senior Associate with the National Community Action Partnership, working on the Training and Technical Assistance team. So I work with the Pathways to Excellence program, as well as with our Human Capacity and Community Transformation grant, and also a little bit with our Learning Communities Resource Center. And I'm also joined today by Jim Boyd. He's a consultant that we've worked with for a long time on Pathways to Excellence. So happy to have him with us today. He's going to help give us a little bit of background about Pathways. So you can see here our agenda for today. We're going to talk a little bit first about compliance versus excellence, because we know that with Pathways to Excellence, we have what's called the standards of excellence, but then we also have our organizational standards in the network. So we're going to talk a little bit about how those connect and are different as well. Then we're going to talk about kind of what Pathways is based on, which is the Baldrige model. We'll talk about the standards of excellence, and then we're going to let you know about some things that are new with Pathways to Excellence and some current opportunities that you can look forward to in relation to Pathways. And then, of course, we'll give you some time for asking some questions about Pathways and share some different resources with you. So just a couple of housekeeping items too as we get started. This webinar is being recorded, and so we can share the recording as well as the slides with you after the event, and you can feel free to share those with other colleagues throughout your agency or your state network if you'd like. Also, everyone is in listen-only mode. So you all are muted on your end, but we do encourage you to ask questions as you have them. So you can go to the chat function, which has kind of a little talk bubble with the circles at the bottom of your screen. And what you can do is ask a question. We recommend you go ahead and ask your questions to all panelists so that both Jim and I can see your questions. And in that way, we'll address those. If we're getting a lot, we'll take pauses to address those, but otherwise we'll definitely address those at the end. Also, if you are having any issues with audio, we do encourage you to go up to the Communicate tab in the upper left-hand corner of your screen and go to Audio Connection. You can there, in that space, you can switch your audio from either phone to computer or vice versa. And sometimes you can hear a little bit better on the phone if you connect that way. As far as your audio connection, or you can adjust your computer speakers and such. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started and jump into our content for today. So I just want to frame this up a little bit, and then Jim's going to talk a little bit more about it. But really, Pathways to Excellence is about taking it beyond compliance. And so as we start to look at how do we become organizations and community action agencies of excellence, this is a little bit of kind of the framework we're looking at. So we have our organizational standards, which, as many of you know, these are our CSBG organizational standards that are required for minimum compliance. And so with these, there's this self-assessment that is involved by the agency. The state does an assessment through monitoring, and this is an ongoing process each year. Then we have our standards of excellence, which are completely voluntary. This is what is included within the Pathways to Excellence program, and we have peer reviewers that review an agency's assessment of the standards of excellence, and a feedback report is received. And then the next and kind of ultimate step here is the award for excellence. And so this involves the same self-study that participants can go through in the Pathways to Excellence program, as well as an on-site visit and a feedback report, and then finally national recognition at our annual convention. So a lot of these components we'll talk more about as we continue on, but did want to kind of show these different steps that we kind of show that between the organizational standards, the standards of excellence, and our award for excellence, that kind of frames up what we call this excellence continuum. So Jim, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you and let you talk a little bit more about this.
Thanks, Courtney. And thanks to each of you for joining the webinar. And if you, in the past, maybe you participated in Pathways, or maybe you've been a peer reviewer, but this is a little bit about information that comes out of the basic training of the origination of the idea of moving toward excellence. And I think that's sort of the framework we want to keep in mind is, moving toward excellence is moving to the next level from wherever you are. And it doesn't matter where you are as long as you are very clear, and that's what the Pathways process is about, of doing an assessment and establishing where you are compared to each of the 35 standards of excellence. But excellence moves beyond the minimum level, which the organizational standards are, sort of the threshold of performance and administration and activity and outcomes, the thresholds that you have to have in place to be a community action agency. And a lot of those originally were part of the standards of excellence. But the standards of excellence are about optimal levels of performance that you can voluntarily move towards. And if you choose to take your organization from wherever it is, and again, it doesn't matter where you are, as long as you benchmark where you are, and then you make a commitment, you and your board, to take it to the next level. And so sort of the principles what you choose to move towards. And you may already be doing many excellent things. Let me get this slide squared away. And one of the excellence principles that we talk about is keeping in mind that for the standards of excellence, every organization is somewhere along the continuum, and you benchmark where you are for each of the 35 standards. And the standards of excellence that we'll talk about more in this presentation are really, if you'll think of them as practices, the very best practices of the very best organization and agencies. And so these are optimal levels that are performed and conducted in the very best agencies. So getting an understanding of those is about learning the standards of excellence, and the self-study is about benchmarking where you are compared to each one of those. And you get a feedback report on where you are. And on the continuum of excellence, you have, you may not yet be focusing on or addressing a particular standard, and that would, of course, be the beginning or the starting point, but most organizations are somewhere along this continuum for each of these practices, the 35 standards of excellence. And that's same true on results. For some of the result standards, you may not yet be tracking those results, or you may have some results, but how far are you along this continuum? And that's what this process, I'm still learning my clues here. Continuing on our excellence culture, getting a good feel for what excellence is all about, it's the mindset that every organization can improve. If you're willing to measure where you are on this continuum, then you can start to think about what the next steps are for improvement. And it is a commitment, and it is a continuous process of always thinking about how to improve where you are and your service delivery system. And it is a focus on customer response and satisfaction and continuous improvement. And all of this comes out of well-grounded quality and quality management background. This particular Plan, Do, Check, Act, the continuous improvement model is the Deming Wheel of Improvement. If you've had any management training, you might be familiar, or you do it just because Plan, Do, Check, Act is a long-term quality management tool. But that process doesn't just happen overnight, and you have to think about, you may already think of yourself as a good organization, and we have many very good organizations, but the question becomes, are you ready to move along that continuum from good to great? And a lot of that has to do with measuring, again, how good are you? Where are you along the continuum compared to what? And in the Pathways process, you're comparing what you're currently doing against each standard, and that's the self-study. And based on that self-study, then you can start to think about which one of these do we want to start focusing on to improve, because it defines, and the feedback you get, the feedback report, 30-page document of feedback from the peer review gives you the starting point for improvement on each of the 35 standards. Another factor we bring in is change, is easy. Transition is harder. It may come as no surprise to you that people don't like change. And so part of the process of change is the working through of the orientation of your whole philosophy and approach to continuous improvement is to help transition that throughout your agency. And what we find in self-studies is the quality management process and the Baldrige process is about systems and processes and how well defined they are, how knowledgeable people are about them, and how focused they are on your agency mission. And so that assessment process allows you to sort through those, because each standard often deals with a specific process and how well that is targeted to your mission. So you're building capacity through improvement and a focus in the areas that the feedback report provides to you. And you're able then to begin to focus and answer the question, is this process that we've used for a long time, does it really focus and contribute to us achieving our primary mission and our goals? Community action agencies and nonprofits are mission-driven organizations, and focusing on your mission and all of your resources and systems and processes need to be what's called aligned and efficient in achieving that. So out of the self-study, you're able to begin to align your systems and processes, and you may discover some that have been there for the whole history of your organization, but may no longer be relevant to your mission. The idea of transformation allows you to come out of the area where you have your old system. Through the self-study, you're able to become aware of those areas of improvement you need to focus on, and you reach the area of conscious competence, where you begin to align your systems and processes, refine and improve them, and begin to move to the new system where becoming an agency of excellence. The standards are based on the Malcolm Baldrige National Performance Excellence Indicators that have been around since 1987, and these are built into the 35 Standards of Excellence and basically focus on moving your systems and processes into alignment and focusing on those things that are most important to achieving your missions and your outcomes, focused on poverty and self-sufficiency. But these criteria have been adapted into the 35 Standards of Excellence. They have been around and established worldwide in the areas of red here. And so they're very focused on organizational improvement and excellence. And the reason these were brought into the utilization is there's a methodology and a framework that's almost universal for how becoming a high-performance, ever-improving organization. They have a set of common practices, and these have all been customized to community action agencies, and that's why they are very adaptable. And so those are built in to these 11 core values, and these are what I said, they're almost universal. If you see anything in there that doesn't seem like, well, that seems like a good idea, well, these things have been established over the years as the underlayment for an agency or organization, whether it's private sector, public sector, healthcare, education. All of these, the Baldrige model is used across all of those types of organizations. So these 11 core values are built in. For any, do you have anything you want to add, or do you want to pick it up from here?
No, I think you framed it up well, and I can take it on from here. So thank you, Jim. All right. So the Community Action Standards of Excellence, Jim gave a nice background of, where kind of all of this information came from, some of the foundational aspects and the basis of Pathways to Excellence. And then we have our Standards of Excellence, which are, really what the Pathways to Excellence program is formed around. And so our Community Action Standards of Excellence represent 35 of the very best practices of the very best agencies. So really, again, looking at this idea of an agency of excellence. And they represent, what we consider these real-world administrative and operational benchmarks that every agency can strive for. So like what Jim was talking about, it is really about benchmarking where you're at now and with each of these standards of excellence, and then identifying how to move up that continuum with your organization. So the standards of excellence have 7 categories, and you'll notice that you see a lot of similar themes here to those 11 core values that Jim just talked about and that were just on your screen. And so the first category here is organizational leadership. And so this focuses in on some of the governance and leadership aspects of the organization. Next, we focus in on strategic planning and direction. Category 3 is all about the customer. So customers, and it's about not just internal customers that come into your agency, but looking also at partner focus and external customers, and as well as staff and customers in that way too. Then category 4, we look at measurement, analysis, and performance management. Category 5 is on the human resource focus. 6 focuses in on process management for the organization. And then number 7, we focus in on organizational results, which has lots of linkages back to all of the previous 6 categories. Then with this is kind of just a graphic that describes kind of the framework of Pathways to Excellence. And so whenever an agency is going through the self-study process, they develop this organizational profile, which kind of explains the environment of the organization to kind of give that foundational piece. And then you have your 7 categories. 6 of them we kind of consider in this oval in the middle. So the first bubble on your left-hand side of the screen, you're looking at leadership, strategic planning, customer focus. Then over on the right-hand side of your screen, you're kind of focusing in on more of those kind of operational type pieces like human resource focus, organizational focus, and process management, as well as results. And then we have this kind of foundation of how we're measuring, analyzing our data, and our performance management system. So some things to remember about Pathways to Excellence, especially as we're going to start looking at some of the opportunities we have in Pathways, is that the Award to Excellence and Pathways to Excellence are voluntary efforts. So like we talked about earlier, the organizational standards are really that minimum compliance, and they're required by all agencies. Our standards of excellence and the Pathways to Excellence program are the step above the organizational standards and are really, definitely voluntary efforts. So it's not anything that anybody's forced into, and so it's something that an agency chooses to go into. And excellence itself is always a choice. So compliance is required, but excellence is a choice. And it can be an opportunity for recognition as well as for learning and improvement in the organization. So there is one other thing I'd say about this is there is, a level of commitment to Pathways to Excellence, but can be very, very beneficial for the organization as well. So I think with this, I'm going to go ahead and pause real quick and make sure we don't have any questions, and then I'll start talking a little bit more about some of the upcoming opportunities that we have. Okay, we did have one question come through about whether PowerPoint slides will be accessible. And yes, this session is being recorded, and we are going to share out both the recording and a PDF of the PowerPoint after the event, so usually within about 2 business days. All right, so just a little bit about what's new with Pathways to Excellence. We're going to talk a little bit about some opportunities that we have coming up and some things that we're working on to improve kind of the accessibility of Pathways to Excellence, as well as how agencies are able to work through it and some of expanding opportunities, basically. So the first one is that we've recently implemented a virtual eCourse on standards of excellence, and it's integrated into the Pathways training to help cut down on travel and in-person training time. So one thing that this does, it's not available to the entire network as of right now, but it is available as you enroll in Pathways to Excellence. So it's the first day of what used to be a 2-day training for Pathways to Excellence, and it focuses in on specifically the 7 categories of the standards of excellence. It's an interactive e-course, and it focuses on kind of what those standards are, and has the agency kind of start to think about how you would apply those and how they relate to the core values. Then agencies come together for the in-person training after that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that process. We're also just kind of in the very beginning stages of looking at moving towards a tiered approach so that there's multiple levels of entry to Pathways to Excellence and potentially up to the award. And so this kind of gives, right now there's basically kind of one way to do it, and so we're looking at how do we offer some different kind of levels that people can enter into based on where their agency is at and kind of what commitment time and things like that they have at the moment, and how do they kind of move up that pathway. So I'll talk a little bit more about that, but again, it's very much in the beginning stages. We're also exploring opportunities to strengthen the link between CCAP and Pathways to Excellence as well, because we know that if we have any CCAPs here on the line, which I'm sure we do, there is definitely a component within the CCAP program that talks about the standards of excellence. And so that is a learning component within the body of knowledge, but what we want to do is make sure that that connection is definitely strengthened, and that CCAPs can see a link to how they might engage in Pathways to Excellence, now that they have achieved their CCAP, Certified Community Action Professional certification. So a little bit more about this virtual e-course on Community Action Academy. This is kind of what it looks like. If you haven't been on Community Action Academy, we have other on-demand e-courses on there as well. But we're kind of building out our area for Pathways to Excellence. And so this is, again, that first component for those agencies who choose to go through the self-study process. Then a little bit more about this proposed tier approach, which, again, this is very much in draft form. We're still working out a lot of the details as far as cost and, what would all be included in each level, what it would be called. But this is the very basic kind of information we're looking at is, with level 1, you would have a board commitment, you would develop your agency profile, and you would learn about the standards of excellence through the e-course. As you move up different levels, you would complete prior levels to make sure you have that basic kind of commitment and knowledge. And then you would start to do assessment of your agency in different ways. So level 2 might involve, and again, none of this is set in stone just yet, but it might involve kind of a mini assessment of your organization, as well as the Pathways Implementer program, which we'll introduce here in a moment as well. Then level 3 would have, again, that same level of commitment and knowledge of the standards, and then they would engage in this kind of full agency-wide self-study process is the idea. And then level 4 is where we really look at the award application. So, which is, currently level 3 and 4, people currently do these. This kind of gives a stair-step approach to how people can enter into Pathways to Excellence and then move up throughout these levels. And then all of those include, or would include, a form of recognition at the partnership's annual convention. So this is just something we're looking at, and I think, the idea is that it would kind of make it more accessible to the network as far as how people are entering into Pathways. So just kind of keep your ears out, and we'll, of course, make a formal announcement once everything is solidified and we have all the details together. But just wanted to let you know that that could be coming, that there's going to be more ways to enter into Pathways to Excellence. Then with our current opportunities that we have to participate in Pathways, there are several. So the first two here are ones that we've kind of mentioned throughout the presentation. So Pathways for agencies. This is where we look at how the agency as a whole participates in this 9-month self-study process. It can also be done in a slightly shorter amount of time, so usually 7 to 9 months is the window that we promote. Then the award for excellence, agencies can apply for the award once they've completed this self-study process, receive the feedback report, and then they go into kind of a process of receiving an on-site visit, and they kind of meet this higher level of the standards of excellence and compete for this award. And this award is given out each year at the annual convention. So if you've attended our annual convention, you may have seen agencies win the award for excellence. That's kind of what we're talking about here. Then the Pathways to Excellence Implementer Program. This one is newer. We just implemented this last year at the Management and Leadership Training Conference in New Orleans. And we're continuing it this year as well. But it's basically kind of a condensed version of the self-study process. And instead of an entire agency team going through the process, it's an individual that becomes certified as a Pathways to Excellence implementer. And so individuals will go through that program and select 1 or 2 categories of the standards instead of the full set of categories, and conduct kind of a real focused self-study process. And then lastly, we have our Pathways Peer Reviewer Program. And this program is where individuals are trained on the standards, and then they are the ones that are trained also on how to conduct a peer review of the agency for the self-studies. So they're the ones that review the self-studies that are submitted for the Pathways for Agency program, as well as the Pathways Implementer program. So as we talk about this Pathways process for agencies, a little more details about how this works. Agencies send teams of 3 to 5 staff for a 1-day in-person training, plus the pre-work eCourse on the standards of excellence through Community Action Academy. Agencies then have about 7 to 9 months to complete the self-study. We provide technical assistance from the partnership provided through a monthly web meeting, and we go through the standards of excellence a little bit more. We answer questions as people are working on their self-study, basically just providing that ongoing support. And then the last phase of that is that a panel of the peer reviewers provide a comprehensive feedback report within 3 months. So it does take about a year to process through the whole Pathways process, from application to when you receive your feedback report. But definitely, we've heard lots of feedback, definitely a worthwhile process. So the feedback process and report, a team of trained peer reviewers assesses that self-study at great depth. We usually include about 3 or 4 peer reviewers on those panels that do the review. They participate in a consensus call to discuss and benchmark the self-study responses against the standards, and the reviewers submit a written feedback report that includes strengths and opportunities for improvement, which are then compiled together. So what are the benefits to this? Pathways really provides a comprehensive assessment of the agency's strengths and opportunities for improvement. And it really works as a great next step for agencies that want to go beyond compliance. So maybe, you're getting into the swing of meeting the organizational standards. And, from there you want to, think about, well, what's next for our organization? How do we really meet and exceed the organizational standards? And Pathways is one way to do that. And that self-study report that is received by the organization is a good way to either start or follow up on a strategic planning process. So it kind of helps with the assessment process, as well as what to do next. So how to plan for how to address, moving up that continuum. Pathways also offers a really great staff development opportunity. So it can help to do that as a team, or if you're looking more at the implementer or peer review program, it can do that in an individual way as well. So of course, another question we always receive is, so what is the cost? And we do have a sliding scale for Pathways to Excellence. It's really based on the agency budget. And then in addition, the agency would cover any costs for travel and lodging to attend the training. So if you're attending one of our trainings that's associated with one of our annual conferences, you know, you would already be attending, of course, you know, still paying for that travel. But sometimes we also have state-based cohorts that you might travel to that would, of course, you'd cover your own travel and staff time, and then the agency fee would be based on that sliding scale based upon the agency budget. So the fees that are being paid for, what they cover is the training itself, the eCourse that's done as pre-work, all the materials. You receive a binder of materials to guide you through the self-study process, the technical assistance webinars that occur after the training, as well as the comprehensive feedback report. And Jim, before we jump into Award for Excellence, anything that you would add to the Pathways process for agencies?
Not at this time. I noticed there's some questions posted. Are you going to pick those up in a minute?
Yes, I think I was going to pause to look at those now. So we can go ahead and do that. Okay, looks like we had a question about, do you have an updated copy of the organizational standards or the most missed standards? We do have some information on that. At the partnership, we did kind of an analysis of some of those standards. What we've been doing is releasing that information on a state-by-state basis. So if you'd like to have information about your state and the most missed standards, you can send me a request, Courtney Kohler. My email is ckohler@communityactionpartnership.com, and we can provide you with that. And then we have another question about how states can encourage community action agencies to move towards pathways to excellence, so the incentive. You know, I would say that we just went over some of these benefits as far as kind of what some of those incentives are. It can provide that staff development, a little bit of team building. It can flow really well into your strategic planning process. And then, of course, it's, again, that next step going beyond compliance from, you know, the organizational standards and moving on up that continuum. Anything else that you would add? Yeah.
This is Jim. We do have what's known as state-based pathways, and that, you know, is where the state association or the state office can sponsor or co-sponsor the Pathways initiative in their state. And that is still on the books, Courtney, as far as I know, where the training, if a state gets a minimum of 5 agencies signed up, then the training will be done in your state at a location of your choice for the agencies that sign up. And it is, you know, an opportunity for the states to kind of kick off an approach to moving to the next level of excellence.
Yes, that's definitely an option. Whenever I talk about some of the upcoming trainings, we do have one state-based cohort that's in the process of being scheduled out in California. Okay, I'm checking a few more questions here. Okay, we had a question about wanting to be clear about the fact that each individual agency may choose whatever level of pathways they choose to do, but all have the opportunity to participate in the eCourse. So that's probably related to the tiered approach. Yeah, depending on how we move forward with that, we're still in process of drafting our deployment plan with that. That yes, no matter where you enter, you know, the Pathways process, the idea is that everyone would start with the basic level of commitment, as well as the Standards of Excellence eCourse. And then an individual agency, based on kind of where they feel like they're at, then that's how they kind of choose which level to enter into. Then we had another question about emailing for additional resources, considering pathways in the standards, or looking to the website for this information, as well as sign-up deadlines. So yes, we do have more information on our website, and I'll show you that here towards the end, what link you go to. So that's coming up here in a moment. And then, of course, you can always email us as a partnership, and I'll provide our contact information at the end to make sure that you have that, and you can always ask questions. And the deadlines really vary based on the opportunity. So I'll talk about some upcoming opportunities that we have set up currently. But then if your state is interested in convening a state-based cohort or something like that, then we would work with the state and the interested agencies directly to identify, the date, the location, the deadline, and all of that timeline aspect of things. So yeah, it just depends on the opportunity. If it's something that we set up at the national level with one of our conferences, we'll of course share that out. Usually we share it out in our e-news. But otherwise, we would work directly if it's a state-based cohort. So I'll talk a little bit more about those opportunities coming up, though, here in a moment. All right, I think that's all the questions I'm seeing at this time. So we'll go ahead and move forward. Some of this we already talked a little bit about, but basically this award for excellence is given to the agencies that achieve this highest level of performance as judged against the standards. So this is really that highest level of Pathways to Excellence is actually winning the award. Any agency can apply. All award winners will have gone through Pathways to be able to apply, to be able to win the award, I guess I would say. And the award winners then receive that national recognition and represent kind of the leading edge of the high performance in our network. So they receive national recognition through our annual convention, but then we also do other things to recognize them as well. We often post it throughout our website, and then we also, and some of our materials that we have, and then we also often feature agencies who have achieved the award for excellence through different webinars and trainings as best practices and models for how other agencies can see examples of how these standards of excellence are carried out. So just the same as agencies who go through the self-study process, they submit the self-study. Those who achieve the award, and it's assessed by this panel of peer reviewers. Then if the applicant scores at the award level against those standards of excellence, the peer reviewers would then conduct that intensive 3-day site visit. So award winners receive a comprehensive feedback report and are presented with the award at the annual convention, which is every August. And the application cost for the award is $10,000. The agencies pay the travel and lodging costs for the site visit team as well. So again, this is that highest level of award, and then the process for the Pathways to Excellence agency self-study process, that one is based on that sliding scale that we talked about earlier based on the agency budget. Then we have our Pathways to Excellence Implementer program, and this offers individuals the opportunity to conduct the shorter self-study that's focused on the 1 to 2 categories. And this helps to provide a professional development opportunity by learning about quality improvement. It builds capacity of the agencies to use the standards of excellence. So it can be a stair step towards the agency conducting a full self-study as well. And then it encourages agencies, again, to continue on that process and develop that full self-study. Generally, we offer the Pathways to Excellence Implementer Program, which we kind of shorten as PEI, as a 2-day training at the Partnership Management and Leadership Conference, which is every January. This year, it'll be taking place on January 7th in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Then we do 5 different technical assistance webinars on a monthly basis after the on-site training to support the implementers through the process. And then as part of the process, the implementers choose their 1 to 2 categories, conduct the short self-study. They participate along with the panel of peer reviewers to assess their self-study against those standards of excellence. And then they actually complete a feedback report in conjunction with the peer reviewers to submit it to agency leadership and the board. Then, like we mentioned earlier, these are just a little bit more details that are about our peer reviewer program. And it really trains staff to review and provide feedback on the self-studies. These peer reviewers are the ones that participate on that panel and provide that feedback report. We do say that peer reviewers should have 5 years of management experience and go through a 2-day training, which is offered every year at the partnership's annual convention. We're also looking at condensing this training to include the eCourse for day 1, and then the 1-day on-site in-person training for the peer review process. And then after the training, peer reviewers are eligible to volunteer to serve on those review panels and conduct those feedback reports. So it's just some different pieces of what the peer reviewers do. They read the agency or implementer self-study, participate on that review panel, and provide that written feedback report. Some of the benefits of doing this, it can provide opportunities for professional development. Again, this is one of those individual opportunities. You learn about the standards of excellence as well as agency best practices. So you venture to say that as a peer reviewer, you're learning from what other agencies are implementing and some of those best practices that you can then adapt to your own agency as well. And it also gains you points for the CCAP application. So your candidate data form, you can count this on there. And the Pathways Implementer Program does that as well. So it kind of creates a chance to apply your CCAP knowledge. And then you're also supporting other agencies throughout the network. So Jim, anything that you would add to the award, the implementer program, or the peer review program?
Only to reinforce that the Pathways is all about assessing where you are at this point in time compared to each standard, and getting the feedback report and using that as a guide book for working toward and applying for the award. So Pathways benchmarks where you are and develops an improvement strategy, allows you to prioritize where you want to start and move toward that highest level for each standard. And so that's the combination there. And then, of course, peer reviewers are integral in the review process for assessing the agency and developing the feedback, because they themselves are, there in the field and can see and understand what next steps are realistic for an agency to take based on where they are starting from. Back to you, Courtney.
All right, thank you, Jim. So the question we had earlier, when are the next trainings? So January 7th is what I mentioned is the next Pathways Implementer program that we're putting out for San Juan, Puerto Rico. So this one is the one that's associated with our Management and Leadership Training Conference. So the deadline associated with this one is not on the slide, but we would like agencies to apply by December 6th because during the month of December, they would be going through the eCourse, which we've had a couple of agencies already go through that, and it does take our estimated about 6 to 8 hours to complete that eCourse. And you can break that up so it doesn't have to be done all at once. You can save your work, come back to it, all of that kind of stuff. So that opportunity is the next one up for Pathways Implementer. The next Pathways Agency training for the full agency self-study, we're looking at late February 2020. The exact date is still to be determined. But this is one of the examples of the state-based cohort. We have opened it up to the entire Region 9 to participate as well. So, we would entertain allowing, really any West Coast agencies to attend that based on space, but the California agencies do get kind of the precedence. So if you're interested and you're in that area, please let us know. We're going to be sending out some further information in the coming weeks to see what interest is out there for that one. Then every August, we generally do some sort of Pathways training. We're still kind of deciding which training opportunity we'll be putting out there for that, but we do have, kind of a space reserved there for conducting one of the Pathways opportunities in Seattle, Washington, and that's always the last week of August. And then again, like we were saying and Jim talked about earlier, the state-based trainings with cohorts of agencies from a single state or region are available upon request. So where to go for more information, you can go to our partnership website, which is www.communityactionpartnership.com. Under the Programs and Initiatives tab, you'll see Standards of Excellence, which will take you to this web page. You could also go to the link directly included here, and you'll learn more about the Standards of Excellence, as well as the different pathways to excellence opportunities. And then if you are interested in applying for any of the opportunities that are coming up, down at the bottom of the page, we do have our enrollment forms and things like that, as well as contact information. A few different tools and resources. Of course, our Standards of Excellence, would encourage you to take a look through those after the webinar. And then there was a recent peer-to-peer webinar that we did with one of the, with the most recent award winner, actually, the one that won the award back a year or two ago, I believe. It was United Planning Organization out of Washington, D.C. So they talked about their strategic planning and performance management approach and helped us out with a national webinar presenting this. So that's an example of an agency who has won the award for excellence, and would encourage you to check that out to learn more about kind of how they applied it and how they got to that point of winning the award. So with that, I'll check one last time for questions, but we also have our contact information here for our team at the partnership that works on Pathways to Excellence. We are currently in the process of hiring a new Vice President for Organizational Capacity Building, which will be part of the position that really oversees Pathways to Excellence. I also play a significant role in Pathways to Excellence program as the Senior Associate on the Training and Technical Assistance team. And then we also have Lauren Martin, who's a new Program Associate with the Training and Technical Assistance team at the partnership, who will be assisting with Pathways to Excellence as well. And then, of course, always Denise Harlow, our Chief Executive Officer, is always available to reach out to and has worked with Pathways to Excellence in the past as well. So with that, I'm not seeing any additional questions, and just want to reiterate that we are recording this webinar, and we can share out the slides and the recording after the event. And we thank you all for joining us today. And Jim, any final words from you?
Not at this time. Thank you for joining.
All right. Well, thank you, Jim, for helping present today. We appreciate it and hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you.